As for the other two men, the Kazakh students, they were charged with conspiring to obstruct justice. They arrived in court today in leg shackles and handcuffs. Each of them faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, which is curiously less than the American. Their attorneys say they plan to plead not guilty, and in a news conference today claimed that their clients did not know that Tsarnaev was a suspect when they took the backpack from his room.
The government allegations as far as that he saw a photo and recognized him immediately, we dispute, and we'll be looking forward to proving our case in court. Mr. Kadyrbayev and his family are very sorry for what happened here in Boston, and he did not have anything to do with it.
So to be clear,
he did not take the computer,
knapsack
he did not
and bring
take
it
the
to the dump and dump the fireworks that were in the knapsack? Can you just explain?
We are not saying that. Mr. Kadyrbayev told the FBI about that. He did not know that those items were involved in a bombing or of any interest in a bombing or any evidential value.
Joining me now to discuss this is David Pakman. He's the syndicated host of the David Pakman Show. He joins us tonight from Springfield, Massachusetts. David, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
David, so tell me, what do we know about the charges and how serious are the charges themselves?
Well, I spoke to two attorneys earlier today, and the consensus is that because all the activity seems to have happened after the bombing itself, at least what's known, that the charges are not nearly as serious as they would be if they were directly involved in the commission of a number of different felonies potentially, and that then they could actually be charged with the results of the bombing itself. So as serious as they are, and kind of some debate about whether they're being the book is being thrown at them because of kind of the importance of this particular case, not as serious as if the involvement had been before in the planning stages.
And David, tell me this, if you were able to learn this from the lawyers you spoke with, how will the case against the U.S. citizen be different from the one against the Kazakh students?
Well, it may not be different. It really depends on how it goes forward, and that I think we're probably going to learn more about that. I did ask at least one of the two people I spoke with about that, and it's really going to depend on how it's carried forward. It may not be different at all, and this was the subject of a lot of the debate even before the Tsarnaev brothers were even identified as suspects. The question of if and when they are captured, how will that go forward? And kind of the same questions here. We're just not sure, but there may be no difference at all.
And were you able to find out if there's any indication that they knew about his plans, you know, Tsarnaev's plans, the brothers' plans, before the bombing itself?
No, I've not found out either way. In other words, I can't confirm or deny that. We don't know for sure that that wasn't the case, but no evidence that it was right now.
And it's safe to say, David, that they're going to probably be wrangled into testifying against Tsarnaev, and that's probably why they're in custody now. Is that right?
There's a very good chance that at least there would be an attempt made in that direction, and depending on what specific conversations did or didn't happen at some point along the time where they were assisted, maybe that was something that was discussed, maybe it wasn't, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward.
You know, staying with the case a little bit, David, today there was a report out in the Daily Mail that the Saudi government, in addition to the Russians, alerted the U.S. government to Tsarnaev. Could there be truth to that report?
Well, they're denying it, as you know, and there certainly could be truth to it. You know, the problem I have with this report, and not specifically, but this type of report, and a lot of the ones we got from a number of corporate media outlets during the investigation, was once there's information put out that ends up not being accurate. We kind of understand how that happens, right, in kind of natural news reporting. But the problem is that it feeds and allows for all sorts of different conspiracy theories, and then it's used as so-called evidence, and I use that term really loosely, by theorists who want to allege that the initial reports, which eventually were kind of withdrawn, had elements of truth which show us some kind of alternate reality that's being hidden from us. So it may be true, it may not. The Saudi government is denying it, and I'm just kind of worried about how this is going to be used.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the sources that were cited, both cited anonymously. One was a high-placed Saudi source, one was a high-placed DHS Homeland Security source, and then, of course, you have the embassy, the Saudi embassy in Washington, denying the case to begin with. I think this case will be remembered from start to finish as one that relied upon social media and erroneous reports. And we're not saying this is erroneous, but you know, how does that change the way that reports like that stories like this will be reported going forward, do you think?
Well, hopefully it will change it drastically. I mean, after we found out about individuals, including a 17-year-old who had nothing at all to do with the crime that was committed, being ostracized in his neighborhood because he had a red circle, drawn around him on the internet, hopefully that, if nothing else, will change how that is handled going forward.
Yeah, the fabulous legacy of the New York Post. Today, Senator John McCain reacted by saying that this incident could impact immigration reform. And, when you hear about the Kazakh kids, you hear these guys from Dagestan. Let's listen to what the senator had to say about that.
Maybe as part of overall immigration reform, we should look at the process of who's allowed into this country, under what circumstances, what is their situation and background, particularly from countries that have histories such as Dagestan and Chechnya and others where there's been significant influence of radical Islamic extremism.
So, David, what do you think of that? Are Republicans going to use this as a reason to derail immigration reform?
They are. It's been made very, very clear that that's what they want to do. But this is kind of an interesting discussion because there's a lot of shades of gray here. How long after someone has come to the U.S. and committed a crime can you still say that the fact that they came from somewhere else is really the factor that made them commit that crime? I came to this country from Argentina when I was 6 years old. If I had committed a crime at 10, 12, 14, now, at what point does the fact that I came to this country become the one factor that we point to in figuring out why a crime was committed? I don't know.
David, I would not have had you on the show if I'd known that you were an Argentinian reporting this stuff. Are you kidding me? It's absurd, and that's what I just said is as absurd as what McCain is saying. And I think one of the things you point out so well is that they're talking about, oh my God, we got to crack down on student visas. We got to crack down on student visas. The Tsarnaev brothers weren't here on student visas. They were here on asylum. And exactly what you say, they're picking on people, and it's such a wrong-headed way. Let's talk, though, about what this event could mean for all of us going forward. A new CNN poll finds that 61% of Americans are primarily concerned about the government enacting new anti-terrorism policies that infringe on their civil liberties. Just 31% are more concerned about the government failing to enact strong new anti-terrorism policies. Will this play out differently than it did after 9/11 now that we see those numbers?
Well, this is fascinating on so many levels because we've seen two different pretexts or stories being told to get kind of political will to do different things. So number one is the use of this kind of global war on terror to get citizens to accept military action, surveillance, all sorts of different things. And then we've also had kind of some backlash to that, right? People saying, well, we're going now too far. I'm losing too much freedom and too much privacy in the name of security. So I think that there's an element of backfire here in some sense. And I think that if we actually look at that poll, I would encourage people to look at it. There is an element of push polling in it, where there are very specific questions drawn up to elicit, to kind of, I believe, push people into answering a certain way. I don't know exactly how valuable some of the information in that poll is, but it is interesting that people seem to now be rejecting that initial idea of exactly how dangerous is the world, and people saying, I understand that these types of incidents happen, but overall, statistically, I'm pretty safe, and I don't want to give up freedoms or privacy in order to have that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, that is syndicated radio host David Pakman. Look him up, The David Pakman Show. Thanks always for coming on, being smart.